sewing is art. You can see from that exhibition that Peter Herbert curated and Sue Quaitzman was involved with. It was a very vibrant exhibition. It's so colourful and beautiful, and then Rosemary was there as well, and she was finishing off her ironing board piece with all the little bits and bobs around it. It's just nice to touch people like that and see it as part of, you know, a much bigger picture for the NHS.
You can wash his kimonos in 40-degree wash.
Mum and my grandmother both sewed and made costumes, so that's the environment I was brought up in. If I could choose anything, I'd have always chosen textiles and fabric as my starting point, and that's the thing I love the most really. Finding recycled fabrics, going to charity shops and rummaging through. You know, I was on holiday, I spent if everybody else was in the bar, I was in a charity shop in Spain trying to find just that perfect bit of fabric. My fabric choices are really to echo the theme. And it's like with this piece here, this is actually a family I saw on Cromer Beach. To me, it sort of typifies what English people do. There's not many other places in the world a family would sit on a drizzly beach having a picnic with their children. So to create an atmosphere, for me, it was important to use just the right colour tones to create that sort of grey picture. And so for this one, when this is sort of meant to be like a festival, I would choose, you know, brighter colours. The overall theme, it's the subject matter, it's what it's about, and it's all trying to create a story really. And because they're all snapshots of things I've seen or contemporary society, I wanted them to be quite clean lines. So it's like a graphic novel type image.
I saw a lady making these rugs and I brought a kit, and to say I was hooked ever since. I get all my materials from my local charity shops, and then me and the family spend hours de-seaming them, cutting them up for me to start making all these creations. The poor people couldn't afford carpets, the women would get together with the children and make rugs so they've got something warm to stand on the cold mornings, you know, around the mining towns. It's all over the world.
I really found that that meeting of my artwork and then putting it on fashion, that's where I really want to go with it. And I'm really interested in the sustainable kind of like ethical base of stuff as well. I try and get stuff from charity shops, and I take, you know, lots of people give me second-hand fabric. I was offered to go to the Brighton Sewing Bee and share my story. So I started to write things down, and I realised that one of the connections for me was When I was very little, I felt very isolated and alone, but when I got to school I picked up a crayon and did loads of big circles, and that connection brought me back, kind of grounded me quite a lot. And then once I found sewing, that was where I really felt that it was really like a meditation for me. And then I could transfer my drawings and put them onto fashion items and make accessories. You know, there's a really creative process and a healing process through creativity.
Textile is versatile, and the colours and everything. My passion is portrait, so I just specialise doing portrait and doing different way, different style, whichever way, then trying to perfect it, you know.
If I did a plain embroidery and I frame it, it becomes, the context is it's an artwork. I started off as a painter. I mean, I've always drawn and I've always sewn. My mother had died. I had 2 small children, one who was disabled, and I just lost myself. So I did a lot of self-portraits, and then I turned to doing sort of narrative embroideries about what was going on in my life, and they were all handwork. So they're done on paint rags, which were domestic napkins, so you have that domestic idea in there. But this is a perfect example of that transition piece. So it's really a sort of homage to my children. I think to be an artist, you have to block everyone out. And when you have a family, that's very, very hard to do. So it was sort of constantly being torn in two. And that's why switching to embroidery made my life so much easier and more enjoyable, because I don't have to split myself off. It's sort of like, it's like cutting off an organ or cutting off an arm, because you have to really cut everything off to be alone and work. But with embroidery, I don't have to do that. So I can do it while I'm with other people. And that makes my life much more seamless. So I can do it anywhere, I can talk to people while I'm doing it, and I don't have to be locked away. So it's not that artist off in their studio anymore, that kind of thing. For me, the stitching is absolutely important. But the main thing is, and it doesn't have to be stitching, is doing things with your hands. I think the human hand is meant to do things, and it fidgets all the time. Using your hands is the most fulfilling thing you can do, because you're using your hands, you're engaging your whole mind, you're figuring out problems, you're making things that weren't there before. And I think that is really the magic of art, is that you can wake up and make something that never existed before.
Are you enjoying this one? It's a good one. It's a good one. They're always good. That's good.
My son had been very ill, and we thought that he was going to die, and if he didn't die, we thought he was going to be very disabled. And so we went through a terrible time with him in hospital, and thank goodness he recovered and went through a long time of therapy with physiotherapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, and during that time, while he was living with us, I was still working in the studio, and I decided to make that piece of work. It was a therapeutic thing to do, and it would give me a really close connection to what I was doing. It felt even closer than doing the actual stitching. The canvas was really stiff, so it made my fingers bleed, and the blood is down the edges of the canvas. So that gave it an extra special kind of feeling, really. It made me feel closer to Simon whilst I was doing it. For as long as I can remember, I've done a lot of stitching, and it just happened that I started to stitch in my work. I find it interesting to bind things and to stitch and to. It just feels natural to stitch. And all these headpieces are all about silencing, how people are silenced in all sorts of ways. So this is St. Christopher, and I started this with just a simple image and padded it and stitched it and painted it and gilded it. It's had quite a lot of work.
Well, I'm the fraud in the show, really, because I don't stitch. I don't do anything to do with sewing. Well, I think the last time I sewed anything was darning my own socks when I was a teenager. I suddenly realised when this show came about that I'd been doing some paintings imitating stitched work. Yeah, the first painting I did was of the back of two of Chris's paintings. She was, at the time, a few years ago, she was doing Marilyn Monroe and Elvis. As she was doing them, I noticed the back of the canvas she was stitching, and there was fantastic things happening. The threads were all hanging about and cut and dangling and kind of scruffy but lovely, but they still look like Marilyn and Elvis. I suppose I'm not the typical gallery artist in that all my work looks like a Royal Academy summer show, because every single piece looks as though it's been done by a different person. So I haven't got a particular genre. I'm more known really as a trompe-l'oeil painter. Trompe-l'oeil meaning really to trick the eye. And I had a picture in our cottage and thought, oh, this would be perfect for the show in St Pancras. I thought it'd be quite fun just to sneak that one in and see what happened. And it has fooled quite a few people. Yeah, well, that's not the idea. I mean, it's as a piece of textile art, it looks like quite a boring patchwork of bits and bobs sort of stitched together. But you need to stand in front of it for a few minutes and see that, and do that, really.
I'm a jeweller, Mimi B Jewellery. I've been working with Peter for a number of years with different exhibitions, and I became involved with the Sewing Circle because I've expanded my work and I've done more collaborative work. I got very much involved with colour, which everybody has, but I introduced more and more colour. I've been encouraged by Sue and Peter to just let it go and expand and just grow. We've gone from necklaces through to body pieces, and each piece has been different, and I've grown and grown and grown.
So I am Florent Bidois, and this is my work. So this is a dress that I made in 2016. It's all reclaimed fabric. It was, I think, like cushion case, I think, for like a couch or something. And my mom actually stitched all the buttons. There are more than 130 buttons, I think. They're all gold. And the closing bit in the back I stitched myself. This neck piece I made in 2016 as well, in November. These are felt people that I embellished with gems. And so yeah, and I made this neck piece especially for this show. So it's a felt base and artificial leaves on top. And this is actually a headpiece that I have worn several times. This is like a lily pad that I got in the high street, and I bejeweled it, and then I just stuck a big frog on it. So this is the only headpiece. The other ones are just a decoration for the whole shop window.
My background is in costume and fashion, so from the clothes I kind of moved to art, And it's kind of funny because sewing art is considered more as a minor art. It's like very like housewife thing. So it's been kind of really depreciated. But I think with this exhibition and in my work, I want to show it could actually be a really creative and noble form of art, as it's kind of able you to create really intricate design.
I am an assemblage myself because I take all my stuff and I put it all together and there I am. A walking piece of art.
But I'm an assemblage artist. I've always been an assemblage artist since I started doing art. And that's taking disparate things and putting them together. That's reinventing things. That's bringing old crap to life again. And stitching is another way of doing that. I use lots of different fabrics. I use lots of different images. And in my sculpture, I use a lot of old toys and dead dolls that you think will never come to life again, and I bring them to life. Everything can be reborn, and assemblage art is a way of making it into something even more amazing than it was last time. And stitching is just one more way of putting it together. There's glue. I use a lot of sculpting material which sticks things together. That's what I do, that's my work. And stitching is another way. Also, stitching is almost like, it's another kind of paint. And a lot of really edgy artists, men and women, are stitching because it gives a whole other effect, and a very exciting effect. I love color, it fills my soul. I can't live without it. It's not that I'm doing something on purpose or consciously, it is who I am and it is what I am.
Feel the lightness in my heart sing louder, yeah, when I feel that feeling beating through the ground. I know